In the last video, we installed Google Drive for syncing in Windows, and we talked about what benefits there are for syncing, automatically backing up your data, and how to configure that. Now, let's talk about how we're going to install this or configure this in Linux. There are many ways to install a Google Drive or, say, Dropbox, maybe even OneDrive, I'm not sure, in Linux. There's many ways to accomplish this, but I personally like the convenience of, a true cloud solution where I can go to any device and access the files that I've uploaded and synced, whether it be tablet, phone, or computer. So as we can see here, How To Geek has a nice article on this. I figured I'd pull this up real quick. There's a few ways to do this. I mean, you don't have to use a third-party syncing tool. But I choose to because, as you can see in this article at the bottom here, the main drawback of not using a third-party tool for syncing Google Drive in Linux is you're not going to get the actual sync itself. So as you can see here, you won't get an entirely offline copy. So for me, I travel. I want to know that everything that I'm doing is backed up, that it's available on every device immediately as long as that device is connected to the internet. I want to be able to modify the contents of my sync, whether I'm online or offline, and then have those automatically back up once I'm back online. So I choose a third-party syncing software for Google Drive on Linux. As you can see here, there's Overdrive. We got some interesting info about this. I've never used this. To me, spending $30 on something that I use daily is not a problem. This pays for itself. For me, this pays for itself pretty quickly. So InSync is a nice application. I've been using this for years. They've improved it a lot. In fact, I'm actually using it on my desktop right now. You can see it's got this nice little GUI here. We can do some refresh here, see the progress of the actual sync. If I change something that's large, this is handy. There's shares that people have shared with me, and then errors and actions required. Pretty simple, but nonetheless, it's a slick application. It runs real well. I've never had a problem with it as far as crashing or using up too many resources or whatever the case. I definitely recommend InSync. However, your mileage may vary. There's a few other options here. Check out this link. I'll leave a link in the description. A couple other options besides InSync, but that's the one I choose. So if you go to InSyncHQ.com and go to downloads, pretty straightforward. You can get this for Windows and Mac. I don't know why you would get it for Windows, considering the last video we went over how to install the native Google Drive agent in Windows. Maybe there's some extra functionality or something like that. So we're going to download for our Linux distribution. Pretty straightforward here. Choose your distribution. I'm actually on OpenSUSE here. And 64-bit. There's Leap and Tumbleweed. I believe this is Leap, but I don't think it actually matters. 64-bit or 32-bit, you need to make sure of what you're on there. Generally, in this day and age, you're going to be on a 64-bit machine if you want to double check that. We're going to simply do an LS CPU here. And we can see my architecture 64-bit, no problem. So I'm going to save this file. The file I just downloaded, which is our FC24, doesn't really matter again, 24, 25. These are Tumbleweed, and one of them is the Leap distribution. Again, it doesn't matter. From my experience, it's going to be the same file, and either one's going to install. So we're going to move to root here. We're going to run a zipper command, install InSync, and let's do 24. You could also just sudo this command, sudo zipper install, instead of suing to root. The Problem here is glibc is coming up as actually a lower version on here than I have on my machine. For some reason, it's saying it needs 2.24, even though I have a newer version installed. I'm going to say break the dependency and install anyway. Dependency, or ignore the dependency, I should say. And we're going to continue, and we're going to get an error here about the package is not signed. So depending on how paranoid you are, you can follow the instructions here for the repository. So for instance, if you trust this repository, you can follow these instructions for your Linux distribution and install this, and then install InSync from the actual repository, which will handle the signing and all that kind of stuff. I'm not worried about it, so I'm going to ignore. And once it's installed, we're going to start it. We're going to notice an icon show up here. There we go, in the taskbar, or the sys rather. And then we're going to get prompt to install our Google account. Do we want to anonymously send usage reports? That's up to you. This is my VM test machine, so I don't care. I'm just going to get rid of it after we do this. We're going to go to our Google account. And we're going to use my email address. And you can allow, it's going to prompt you for permission to allow this application to access your Google Drive stuff. Make sure you read this and understand what it says. So now it's logging you in. Let's see what we got here. Sync Google Drive items. So now we choose what we want to actually sync. Sync on demand, open the file in a desktop app. You can read through this little tutorial here. Sync multiple drive folders, that's great. And share and rename, blah, blah, blah. So we're good here. This is the link that it's going to create inside your distribution here. So if you go to home, you're going to end up seeing risk-based at gmail.com. It's going to create this folder in here. If you want it to be called something else, feel free to hit change it. And we can sync now. Let's go. All right, so you can see we just created this. We're going to pop in some folders here. So what happened is InSync has read your Google Drive and sees your folders here and your files that it found. We can say, okay, thank you. We can say sync these. Say I don't want to sync these. I don't want to sync this one. I don't want to sync movie. It's too big, whatever. Click the ones you want synced, and we hit apply. Yes. So here we go. It's starting to sync. And as you can see, this is my trial. I actually bought this for a different Gmail address for my personal one, which I'm not showing here. So once you buy it, obviously, you're not on a trial and you're good. So we're going to see these just popped in here. I don't actually have anything inside here, asset or doc, but I could go in and we could test out the syncing real quick. Let's see which Gmail address I'm on right now. All right, as we're loading up here, we'll check out our Google Drive. And that is in the top right in this little grid pattern. We'll hit Drive. And as we can see, we're going to pop in asset and doc in here, all those folders we saw before. And we can create something in there to make sure the sync happens properly. So here's our asset. If it would let me click, hello. There we go. And we're going to create a new folder. And we'll call it delete me. All right, so we created that up in Google Drive, and we should see that pop in here in just a minute. Oh, it looks like we got an error. What are we doing here? Oh, it just popped in there. Not sure what this error is. Maybe we can't see the error if we haven't. Oh, here it is. Feed, actions required. Alright, so it's going to complain if your file names have special characters like Cyrillic or Asian type of Chinese, Japanese characters, that kind of thing in the name. No big deal if that doesn't apply to you. If it does apply to you, then I would say go on and do some research, see if InSync can support those or not, because really InSync is the engine that's syncing from Google Drive down to your local machine here, and you're going to have to be able to read those file names, and that's going to have to be supported by the application that's doing that, which is InSync. So we'll do more info on this just to see real quick. It's probably okay, so you probably have to buy it or log in. Go ahead and do that if you need to. I'm not going to do that. I don't need to. I'm good with what we have. And so we're going to wrap up here with how we're syncing Google Drive with Linux. Nice and easy. Can't complain. Here's our folder. We can just throw this into places. Pop in here, and then we can get to here quickly. So, unlike the Windows installation, I would suggest just using everything out of this location rather than changing documents or download from your local machine to point to here. It's a little less seamless, but if you're using Linux or Unix, then you're used to that sort of thing, and you're probably smart enough to understand you need to click here and create your documents in here in risk-based, or rather your Gmail sync doc rather than home documents. So anything I put in here will not sync to Google Drive, but anything I put in my Google Drive folder doc will sync. All right, we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for watching, and check out the next video from Risk-Based.